Hi everyone and welcome to this new webinar. Today is a bit different. We are going to focus and showcase how Twinmotion can be used for product visualization. We are going to start with that headset, showing you how to create a Packshot. After that, we are going to show you how you can use the scene state inside Twinmotion to switch through different variants of that same headset. Then we'll switch to an environmental shot on another product. Before starting, let's actually have a quick look at the user interface. The user interface inside Twinmotion is divided in three main parts. On the left here you have the library, which is native of the software. In that library you will find more than 60,000 assets and materials. If you want to drag something in your scene, if you want to add it to your project, it's a simple drag and drop. So for example, here let's come to the Quixel Megascan folder, 3D asset, interior, furniture, seating. Let's just drag, for example, that simple chair. And just going to turn it 90 degrees so it's facing up. And here, as you can see, in just a couple of clicks, I just added that simple chair to my project. In Twinmotion, we have those native objects. We have also some vegetation, materials, characters, vehicles. We have anything to start populating your environment. The second most important panel is the one at the bottom. It's what we call the dock. It's where you will find all the options, the tools, and the settings. For example, here you will have all the settings regarding the lighting, the rendering, or the weather on the camera. If, for example, here in my toolbar, I select the material picker and I click on any of my material, like that golden plastic, here I can change, for example, the color, making it red or green. Finally, the third most important panel is the one on the right. It's what we call the scene graph. It's basically where you have all the hierarchy of your project. For example, here, if I expand some of those folders, as you can see here, I am right now in the Packshot folder. And here I have that headset that is visible. At any moment, I can hide that headset and unhide that other one, for example. Throughout this webinar, I'm going to use the Path Tracer. The Path Tracer is a DXR accelerated physically accurate rendering mode that allows you to basically create final pixel imagery. You can turn on the Path Tracer with that simple icon in the toolbar. And if you want to learn more about the Path Tracer, we have a dedicated article on our support website that will let you know all the details and the system requirements to run it. So now let's actually start with a new scene. So that's the look of Twinmotion when you first launch it. When you want to import a project or a file, in our case that headset, I'm going to go to the import dock and click on that import button. This will open me that simple window. I will click on open and look for my file. So here I have my file. I'm going to import that as a udatasmith file. My file has been imported, it's just below the camera. So if I start to look down, it should be like here, just beneath me. Right now, as you can see, when you first start Twinmotion, you have that endless starting ground and we have that cityscape. And we actually don't need that for visualizing product. So the first thing I'm going to do is select my starting ground and delete it. I'm going to go to the settings, location. And here in the background, I'm just going to disable that background. The next step will be in the lighting. Right now we have that default sky. Here in our case, I want to load a studio type of Hdri. So this is done with the sky dome option. So I will click on, turn it on. It will by default enable an Hdri of a sky with some clouds. And I can go to the more and load my own texture. Today, what I'm going to use for this webinar is an Hdri coming from Grayscale Goria. My Hdri has been loaded. As you can see the sky has been converted, has been transformed with that simple texture. So now we need actually something behind our headset where we can apply a simple color, and we don't want to see that Hdri like that. A simple way to use that will be to simply go to the library, primitive, and simply drag and drop a simple box. Just going to place that behind my headset. Something like that. So now let's actually place down a camera. I will come to the media, image. I will click on the plus button to create a new image, a new camera. And now let's work on the settings. The first thing I'm going to do is to change the resolution. Right now, by default, the format is full HD, and I don't want that. I want to create a square image. So I've clicked on the more, and here I can type the value I want in the height field. Next step will be to come to the camera settings and change the focal. I want something pretty small, like maybe 20. Now, to align my camera perfectly on the face of that cube, I will click on that tool and simply click anywhere on the face of that cube to align the camera perpendicularly to that geometry. And now to focus on my object, I will select my object in the scene graph and press on F to focus on it. So now let's actually refresh my camera point of view. As you can see here, we now well have our headset in the middle of the screen. For the first image of my Packshot, I want the headset to have a slight rotation so we can see a bit better what we are doing. So here I've simply selected my headset in the scene graph, and I'm going to move the camera a bit up so we can see better what I'm doing. And here I'm just going to rotate it maybe by 30 degrees, something like that. Coming back on my image, I can click on the refresh button to recapture the thumbnail. Let's maybe come a bit closer to our project for that first image, and again clicking on refresh. Now what I can do is maybe work a bit on the lighting, and after that we are going to focus on the materials. But first, let's have a look at the lighting. I'm going to the more on that specific image, lighting. First thing I want to do is disable the auto exposure. I want to manually control it. Here I can tap a value like 2 or 3. Not too high, because I also want to raise the luminosity created by my Hdri here. Let's stick with maybe 4 and come back to the exposure and have also a value 3.5 maybe. Yeah, something like that will be fine for now. What I also want to do is change the white balance. 65 should be great in our case. So now let's actually start working on some materials. Twinmotion comes with hundreds and hundreds of material, but right now they are dedicated to the architecture industry. So in my case, what I did is I took some texture from the Grayscale Gorilla website, and I created my own custom material that I then saved inside what we call the user library. So basically, all the upper folder that you can see here are native of Twinmotion. And at the bottom, the user library is where you can create your own materials and import your own object and save them inside Twinmotion library. In my case, I've created a folder that I name Product Viz Material, and here I have all the cool material that I'm going to use on that object. First thing I can do, for example, is to add some pad, some nice fabric pad on the foam part of my headset here. So let's drag that fabric over here. Right now, as you can see, the scale is a bit too big, so I can just lower the scale with that simple slider. Maybe now we can have some nice plastic on the side instead of that green one, so I'm going to probably use that plastic mat over here. By default, it's that green, that pink look, but I can manually change and select the color I want. Yeah, that gold one seems pretty cool. Next up is actually, let's drag the same pad material on the upper part over here. Same thing here, going to change the scale. As you can see right now on the inner part we can see through. It's because that golden plastic here is not two-sided. So I'm going to the settings and I'm going to turn two-sided on so we can't see through it anymore. Here we can still see through that part, which is that other material. So let's do the same thing on that material with the Twinmotion logo. So I'm going to pick that material, make it two-sided, and this way we can't see through it anymore. So now let's actually work a bit on that material. So here right now we just have that diffuse with the Twinmotion logo, and it's not what I want. So here I'm going to actually remove that texture. I'm going to use that texture on the reflection channel. To see a bit more, what I'm going to do also is to change the color to have something darker. And here, as you can see now with that map, with that texture loaded in the reflection channel, the darker parts are more reflecting than the lighter parts. That's why we can see a bit better the reflection inside the Twinmotion logo itself. So that looks pretty cool. What else can we do on that headset? Maybe have a nice grainy plastic over here, so I'm going to maybe use that one. Or let's have a look at that one. Yeah, that one looks pretty cool, even though we don't see it really well right now. Yeah, to better see it, what I'm going to do is come back on my camera, enter the more, render. The first thing I want to do is switch the aliasing filtering to 1. A lower value will give you a crisper result, where a higher value will smooth a bit your final image. I'm also going to disable the denoiser. The denoiser is basically an AI tool that will soften your image. Going also to raise the number of samples per pixel. It will be especially useful for the final image I'm going to export. Also, right now on the inner part of my headset, the texture is fully white and I want something a bit darker that aligns well with the darker pad. So here I just selected my material. I'm just going to apply a dark gray color to it. Something like that. Also here we have some small screw. So here I could use some metal. So for example, here in the metal folder, I can use maybe some brushed aluminum and just turning that a bit black, painted black. So we have that nice brushed aluminum. It's really a fine, small detail, but it works well. And what I can also do is use that same material on the Twinmotion logo here on the side. Okay, so it starts to look pretty good. What I wanted to show you with the plastic just before is that you can quickly change the lighting by turning the Hdri. So here, if I enter my Sky Dome option, I can just basically turn the position of my Hdri that will allow me to see my object in different lighting conditions. So here, for example, we can see a bit better the shape and the grain of the plastic. So, coming back to our image, that should be the final image for that headset. What I want to do now is create a Packshot, which is a collection of images of that specific object. And for each image, what I want to do is see another part, another orientation of the object. What I could do is just turn around and capture some other images. But in our case, what I find more useful and more simpler to do is to select my object, duplicate it. So what I'm going to do is here, click on copy. In the scene graph, I'm going to right click and click on paste here. That will create a copy of that object. I can choose to copy it as an instance. That means that, for example, if I change the gold color on the first one, it will also affect the second one. But if I do that as a copy, the changes done on one won't affect the other. So for that first Packshot, what I want to do is keep the exact same settings for all my headsets. So I'm going to leave that on instance. That new headset, what I want is to actually have a camera facing completely in front. So I'm just going to tap -30 degrees. And I'm going to click on New Image to create actually a new image. In that new image, I will first need to hide my first headset. I will press refresh. And on that first image, same thing here, I'm going to hide that second headset. And same thing here, press refresh. So here we have two images with my headset from two different camera positions, basically. So let's actually do that with a couple more images. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy this one, paste it over here as an instance. That one, I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. Pressing create. I'm going to hide that new one on all the others. So we have those three images now. And for the final one, maybe what I can do is just maybe a close-up. So I will start with that perspective image, going to click on the plus to create a new image. And here, instead of duplicating an object, I'm just going to move the camera, come a bit closer to my object, press refresh to just do a close-up on that new object. So here is basically how you can create quickly a pack shot for your e-commerce on your headset. So now let's have a look at how we can use the scene state to use and showcase different variants of that object. So the scene state, you can find that under the scene graph. I'm going to switch from the statistic panel to the scene state. So what I'm going to do here is create a first scene state, which I will call the golden variant. I'm going to select that headset, and I'm going, actually, let's organize that a bit in the scene graph. I'm going to create a new folder that I'm going to name Packshot, and I'm going to move everything in that folder. Now, what I'm going to do is also create a new folder that I'm going to name color variants. And it's the new folder I'm going to be working on. For that, I will select the background, which is the box behind the headset. And I'm going also to select the headset itself. I'm going to copy that, paste that in my new color variant folder. And I'm going to paste that as a copy because I want to apply some changes in terms of colors. So what we can do now, I will click on the plus image to create a new image. On that new image, I'm going to hide completely the Packshot folder and leave the color variant folder on. So now if you look at the scene state, we have that golden variant that contains that first headset over here, which is in gold color. Now let's actually create a new variant first, create a new scene state. That one we are going to rename that and call it maybe, what color we could do, like a blue one? I'm going to select that headset, I'm going to copy that, I'm going to paste it again over here, I'm going to paste that here as a copy. That new headset, I'm going to just apply that headset in that color variant. Let's actually just do a quick color change so we better see what we are working with. I'm going to modify that later. So here I just changed the color to really see that we, in the scene state blue variant, we have the blue headset, and in the golden variant, I'm going to hide the blue variant headset, press refresh. And now, from the scene state panel, I can switch from one headset to the other. Let's stick with that second headset, and let's actually work more on the colors. Going to come back to my user library, product vis material. On the side first, I want to have a nice plastic. So let's come over here, add a nice plastic on the side, something a bit smaller maybe, like that. I want a nice metal on the side. That metal, I want it light blue, almost turquoise would be great. So here the color I'm using, I also want to use it on that inner part of my headset. So to retrieve that color a bit easier, I'm going to store that color in my color picker. Now pressing OK to apply the changes. And now if I select my material on the inside, I can open the color option and I can select that same exact color. So that start to look great. Now also what I want to do is change the material of the pad over here. So I can select that material, and here if I click on the more, instead of using that dark texture, I'm going to load a custom one. And here I know that I have that pan in turquoise color. Actually, let's try to use the same color also on that blue part. So I'm going to come back on that color, and I'm going to have something a bit more turquoise. Something like that. I'm going again to store that new color, to apply it, and also the Twinmotion logo. Also, maybe for that shot, what I can do is change the color of that part to have something a bit more lighter. And what I can also do, maybe change a bit the color on the side, have a bit of blue. Yeah, not sure about that one. And actually, that's one of the power of Twinmotion, is right now, I don't have a clear view of where I'm heading with that. I'm just playing with the color at that moment. So maybe it's better to leave that part in dark, almost black like that. For the upper pad, I'm going to use the same pad as the one on the side. So I'm going to apply it over here. So here we have really a completely different headset. And now if I come back to my scene state, I can switch from one headset to the other by just simply clicking on it right now. What basically happened, how the scene state work, is that it memorizes the state hidden or visible of the object present inside your scene graph. So here, when the color, when the golden variant is enabled, just that headset is visible, and when the blue variant scene state is visible, only that one is visible. To better understand that, we can also just rename that blue, and this one will be renamed gold. Also, the check that you have next to the scene state is when you add a new object to your scene, that new object will be added to all the scene state that are checked. So in my case right now, what I want to do is basically create another scene state, another color variant. To do that, let's first create the scene state. I'm going to rename that the gray variant. I'm going to unselect the other variant. I'm going to select, let's start with the golden one. I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to paste it over here. And since I'm adding a new object to my scene, and since only that scene state is selected, that new object will be added only to that scene state, the gray variant, and it won't be added to the other. So for example, here, if I click on my golden variant, that new object that I just added, that I will rename gray, so we better understand, that new object is not visible neither in my golden, neither in my blue variant, it's only visible in that gray variant here. And here now I can change again the color of that variant without affecting the other. So on that one, what I'm going to do is to come again to the library, product vis material. I'm going to apply a plastic on the side and on the inner part. Maybe not completely black. Also something maybe a tiny smaller in terms of patterns of plastic. For the pad, we can have something a bit lighter to not have something completely black. Like that, using the same pad on the upper part. On the side here, we can maybe have something a bit lighter, also, like that. We can even maybe have some metallic, or almost maybe some chrome on that side here. So that starts to look great. On the inner part, we can also have something a bit less dark. And even on the plastic side over here, we can have something with some plastic flakes like that. So here I just created that new variant, and again that new variant is not visible with the other, and now I have those three variants visible and usable, and I can switch from those three variants directly from the scene state like that. So right now I'm just switching to the different objects, but I can also switch the background. So for example, let's come back to the golden variant. The golden variant have right now a white background. What I'm going to do is actually pick the background. Here I've picked the white color, and I'm going to use a more yellow color for that shot. Actually, also here I just switched to my image, and in my image right now everything basically is visible. What I will do is click on the More, Camera, Scene State, and here in that image I can affect only the golden variant, Scene State. That means that as soon as I'm doing some changes in my golden variant, they will automatically be affected in that image. And if I'm doing some change to my gray variant, they won't affect at all that image. So now, next thing will be to create image for every scene state. So here we have one for the golden variant. I'm going to do one using the blue variant. And I'm going to create another one. Let's press refresh all the time so we better see which headset are where. And on the last one, I'm going to use the gray variant. So now that's done, I also want to have a different colored background for each headset. So here the golden variant is fine. Now let's work on the blue variant. The blue variant, I want to copy that box, copy the background. I want to paste it here as a copy, so I will be able to change the color independently from the other one. And now on that new box, on the box, like the second box I just created, I'm going to pick it, and I'm going to change the color. So now I can switch from the golden to the blue variant. And as you can see, the background is changing too. Same thing for the last one, the gray variant. I'm going to select the box, copy it. I'm going to paste it here as a copy. Since I'm pasting it and since only that scene state is affected, that new object that has been added is just added in that new scene state. And now again, I can select my material picker, click on that material, and just change the color to something like just a simple gray. So here now I have my three images that have a different background. So that's it with this first project. We show how you can create a Packshot with really a white background in the first step. Then I've showcased how you can use the scene state to create and visualize and also switch from the different color variant using the scene state. Now I'm going to actually create a brand new project and showcase how you can use some of the Twinmotion asset to create an environmental shot. So I just started a new project. Again, the first thing I'm going to do is to actually import my geometry. So here I have a guitar as a uDataSmith file exported out of 3ds Max. I just imported that guitar. That guitar actually exists in three different shapes. So we have that first shape, that second one, and that third one. I'm just going to be using that first one for now. Here, same as before, I don't need the starting ground. I also don't need the default sky, so I'm going to load an Hdri. Now that has been loaded, I also don't need the background. So I'm going to the location, background, and I'm going to disable it. So now for that shot, I actually need an environment, a room, a scene to work with. So I'm coming back to the import doc, clicking on import, and I'm going to load my environment scene. That scene is really super simple. As you can see here, it's just a couple of geometry with an opening on the side. And not even sure I'm going to use that opening, but well, let's work with that for now. I'm going to be creating a new material. So for the floor here, we can come to the library. We have some wood, we have some parquet wood that can simply drag and drop inside my scene. But today I want to also show you how you create a custom material. To do that, you first need to select your material picker and click on any material of your scene. I will click on that grid material here to bring up the materials doc. It's basically here all the material used somewhere in your project are listed in that list. I will click on the plus here to create a new material, and I'm going to apply that material on my ground. Now here we have some options regarding that specific material, and the first one I'm interested in is the one to load a diffuse texture. So we'll come to the more of the color control, and here we have a texture control, and in that control I can load my own texture. So in my case, I took a texture from the Quixel Megascan library, and I'm going to just load it inside that new material. So here I just loaded the diffuse texture. It's a bit too dark, so to better see what we are doing, I'm just going to the lighting. Same thing as before, I'm going to turn off the auto exposure so I can manually control it. And I'm going also to raise the intensity of the sky dome. Something like that. Coming back to my material using my material picker, now I will load my normal map. I'm going also to load my parallax map. Parallax map is a grayscale texture that will give you all the depth inside your material. So if I'm coming a bit closer and if I'm playing with the intensity, as you can see, it creates, let's actually disable the path tracer and change a bit the lighting so we better see what we are doing. So here, bump, parallax, more, and here if I play with the intensity, as you can see, it creates all the depths inside your material. So that looks pretty cool. I'm fine with that for now. What I will also need to do is change that wall texture. So I will come to the material inside Twinmotion native library. I will come to the wall covering, and here we have one that works pretty well. It's just a bit too white. So I'm going to just add a color to that. Something like that. Something like that should be fine. Now moving the camera a bit back again, I will select my guitar, which is right now just below the project, and I'm going to move my guitar up in the air. So we can start to work a bit on the lighting. Actually, before working on the lighting, let me work on adding some more assets. Inside Twinmotion, when you install it, it comes with a demo scene. Let me show you really quickly how it looks. So here I just opened the Twinmotion demo scene that you can find by clicking on the burger menu, demo scene, and it's the Lake-House Retreat. In that demo scene, you can launch it to quickly visualize a project that is already fully set up. But why I wanted to show you that really quickly today is that because in that specific demo scene, there is a couple of objects that I found pretty cool, like that sound system over here, that amplifier. And I also really like that speaker here. What I did is I clicked on that speaker and I saved it inside my user library so I can reuse that object in future projects. So now if I come in my user library object, I have here my speaker that I just saved from the demo scene. And I'm actually going to use that speaker in the new scene we are building together. So let's jump back on that scene. So, back in that scene, before using that speaker, let me actually select my guitar. I'm going to turn it facing me, but turning it up. I'm also going to import a stand to place it on something and not floating in the air. Here I just imported my stand. By default it imports at the center of the world, which is just below my project. So I'm going to select the folder, press Shift and click somewhere in my project, and it will align that object to my geometry. So here I've just turned it 90 degrees like that, and I'm going to just place the guitar on it by just turning it roughly 10 degrees, placing it like that, and just a bit on the left. Okay, so here now we have our guitar placed on our stand. Before diving in the material, let's actually place just probably a spotlight somewhere. So I've just came to the lights folder. Here we have plenty of different type of light, from omnidirectional to area light. And in that case, I probably would like to use some kind of IS light. So maybe that one will be great. I just place that just above my guitar, with a lower value, something like that. Still pretty high, so let's just turn it way down, something like that, 15. Right now the shadows are super sharp, so I'm going to the more of the shadow, and I'm going to raise the radius of my light just to soften the shadow completely. I will also come to the renderer, same thing as the other project, turning the aliasing filtering down, disabling the denoiser, so we'll have a crisper and sharper result. So we start to be pretty good in terms of lighting. Let's place down a camera. So clicking on plus, placing down a camera. Same thing here, I'm going to change the resolution because I want to have a square resolution, a square image. And I also want to be closer to my project with a focal of 30, that will be great. So that starts to look pretty good. So now, material picker, let's work on the material. I selected back the wood planks because they are too big, so I'm going to 0.5 will be great. Also, let's work on the material on the stand. So on the stand, we should first have some metallic part on the side here. So I'm going to start with a slightly worn chrome. And I don't want a chrome, so I'm going to make it darker. And I'm going to lower the reflection to have a nice, not matte, but not fully chrome material. So something like that, maybe even darker. Yeah, something like that. On the part that touch the floor, it's supposed to be some rubber, so I'm going to the plastic folder, and at the bottom we have some nice rubber that will work great. Now let's actually work on the materials of the guitar itself. So on the guitar, first we have the neck over here. On the neck we should have some nice wood. We have some inside Twinmotion library, but I actually downloaded one from Quixel Bridge, which is a material from the Quixel Megascan library. And actually, same thing as before, I will create that material with you. So I will first click on the more of the color to load the diffuse texture. So here I just loaded that texture, which look pretty good. And we have a nice reflection, and to add a bit more details, what I want to do is to add some imperfection, especially to the reflection. So for that, I'm going to go to the more of the reflection, and I'm going to load an imperfection texture. So here I downloaded a bunch of imperfection texture from Quixel Bridge. So here is the UI of Quixel Bridge. Here on the left, you have all the different type of asset. 3D asset, 3D plans, surfaces, imperfection. So here, if you come to the imperfection, we have plenty different type of imperfection, from grunge to wipe mark or fingerprints. So I just downloaded a couple of those texture. By the way, while we are in bridge, I also came to the surfaces, wood, veneer, and here we have plenty of really nice veneer, and I just selected one of them and I just downloaded them as an 8K resolution just to have the best resolution possible. So back into Twinmotion, so here I'm just going to load one of the imperfection texture, maybe one like that with some wipe mark. And here, as you can see, it had a really little subtle detail, but on the overall image, I'm sure that will be really a welcome addition. So now let's add some more material. So I'm coming to the metal. I'm going again, maybe to the matte chrome. I'm going some matte chrome on that part over here, making it a bit darker and also loading an imperfection. Changing the scale a bit so we can see a bit better the imperfection. Also on the string, I don't have a string texture, but I have that would work pretty good, I'm sure. So right now it's too big, so I'm going to diminish the scale. I know also that it needs to be rotated 90 degrees, and it's still a bit too big, so I'm going to come back to the scale and 0.05, 0.01. Yeah, 0.01 seems pretty good for the texture of the string, as you can see over here. So now let's work on the bridge. For the bridge, I'm going to use some slightly worn chrome, diminishing a bit the reflection, making it a bit darker, and also probably loading again an imperfection texture. Maybe that one today. So again, it gives a nice tiny detail, and I quite like the end result. So keeping adhere more material to the screw, like that. On that flat part over here, I'm also going to load an imperfection texture. I'm trying to do that a bit quick, so we still have time for the Q&A at the end. So here we have also a cool, nice little detail. It's really subtle, but it looks pretty cool. On the main body of the guitar, I have a texture that will work great. So I'm going to load that texture from my disk. And it's actually that topographic style of texture. Again, here it's a bit too big, so I'm going to diminish, make the scale a bit smaller. So we start to have something that looks pretty cool. I'm missing some wood on the upper part, so I'm going to select the main wood. I could use the same wood like that, but it's not exactly what I want. I want to have another color, so I'm going to duplicate that wood. That means that the imperfection texture will remain present. And I'm just going to switch the wood texture to something a bit lighter, like that one, and also some chrome on that part. Okay, so back in our camera. So that's our shot for now. So as you remember, just a couple of minutes ago, we saved an object inside our user library. So this is now that it will come in helpful. So I'm just going to add it in my scene like that. So that's a cool addition. I'm going to place that on the side. What we have else in our library? Maybe we could use one of the tables. So I will come to the object, home, living room, tables. Here we have hundreds of tables. And what can we use? Maybe that small one here. Just going to place that just behind my guitar. Maybe we can also place a flower pot somewhere. So maybe that one. Maybe it's too big. So here in my toolbar, I will switch to the scale gizmo and just making it that a bit smaller. Also, I have some soundproof foam that I'm going to import just to add something onto my wall. So I'm coming back to the import dock, clicking on import. I'm going to import that again as a udatasmith file. This has been added in my scene graph. As you can see here, we have the soundproof foam. To just place it in front of me, I'm pressing Shift and clicking somewhere. Oops, selecting the object first. And it aligns automatically where I'm clicking. So here I just added that foam in front of me. It's a bit too big, so coming back on my scale tool, I will mouse over my scale here and just type a value of 0.5 to divide the size of that object by 2. And I'm going to duplicate that toward the bottom, like that, one time. Now let's place quickly a material on that. So I'm coming to my user library, ProdVis material. Maybe one of my grain plastic will work great, just with a smaller scale. That should be fine. And also, I could leave it like that, but just for fun, I want to create some kind of wood framing around. So of course, I could come back to my modeling tool and actually model the wood framing, but in our case, I'm a bit lazy, so I want to do that directly inside Twinmotion. So here I'm just using a basic box that I'm scaling down. I'm just going to turn that facing that way, making it a tiny bit smaller. I'm going to align that just on the side like that, and I'm going to scale that in that direction. So now that's done, let's come back to the material, wood. Towards the bottom, we have some seamless wood. At the top, it's mostly parquet type of wood, but here we have some seamless wood, so I'm going to drag that one on the side. Coming to the more, it should be rotated 90 degrees, and since I've stretched that geometry, I will also need to stretch that texture to better see the vein of my wood. So now that's done, I'm using the rotation gizmo. I will come over the rotation axis. I'm going to press Shift, click on that rotate axis to duplicate that geometry in a rotation. And I'm going just to move that toward the side, something like that. And just going to scale that one up to the top part, roughly like that. And I'm just going to make sure it doesn't touch the bottom part, just so when we have the path tracer on, it has some nice little detail like that. So now that's done, let's come back in our image. I'm going to enable the path tracer. By the way, the path tracer is this icon. Since the beginning of that webinar, I've been using it by pressing R on my keyboard to turn it on and off. So that looks pretty cool. Now let's say I want to just take my guitar, take also my guitar stand. I'm just going to turn that in another direction, maybe something like that. Maybe a bit too much. Turning it a bit back towards me. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. That shot looks pretty cool. I could play more with some more lighting. So for example, here I could add an additional spotlight, just tuning it a bit down. I could add like just simple spotlight like here, making it a bit orangey, a bit yellow with not that big. That one is really strong. So yeah, something like that. I could enable the shadow, making it with a wide radius so we don't see sharp shadow. So here, yeah, I could just keep adding more light, keep adding more objects. But now you get the idea. You get that in just like what, 10-15 minutes, I created that rather cool environmental shot. And at least now you are settled to get started with Twinmotion and yeah, now it's your turn. Give it a try and let us know your thoughts on how Twinmotion can be useful in your specific use case. And I'm done with this presentation. Thank you everyone for watching this webinar with us. Now we are going to switch to the live Q&A, and if you are watching that recording on YouTube, leave us your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you everyone.